Hello, and welcome to this month's P&G Alumni Enrichment Series webinar. I am so excited to be your host today. I am Dr. Andrea Bowens-Jones, and I have with me Lisa Gable, who I will introduce later in our talk. So a few announcements before we get started today. This is part of a monthly series. So if this is your first time attending, then I'd love to say welcome to you. If you have attended webinars before, I'd like to say welcome to you as well. Welcome back. So through our monthly series, this is a way for us to connect members all over the globe to for not only an enriching conversation, but also an inspiring one. And we hope that something that you hear today or learn today will compel you to act in a different way. Our webinars are also recorded so that you can go back and view them at any time. So if you're not already receiving the alerts, please do go out and like and share our YouTube network, our YouTube channel, so that you can stay on top of everything. So a little bit about who we are. We are a nonprofit founded by former P&Gers with over 35,000 members, 45 plus chapters worldwide. We are officially recognized and supported by P&G. Connections, enrichment, and philanthropy, all these things are involved in the network. So I do encourage you to come and join us, be a part of our network as well. So on your screen, it may look like this if you're a first time here, and you can engage through this talk. You will not see webinars on, but you can also join us by participating in any questions. So plopping your questions throughout today's talk into the question box, but also you can reply to polls as well. You will stay muted and your cameras will stay off throughout the entire talk. And I will be the only one that can see your questions, so you don't have to worry about that. And we will collect them at the end during our Q&A time. So I'd like for you to take a moment to participate in a few polls before we get started today. You should see the first poll on the screen. Are you a part of the local P&G alumni chapter? Please put your responses in the box. Okay, thank you. You should see the second question on the screen. Where are you in this world? Okay, next question. Primary occupation. Industry. And the final question, your functional expertise. Thank you for participating in our polls. And without further ado, Lisa, are you ready to get started? I know I am. I'm excited about today's talk.
I am too. Thanks so much for having me.
Let's see. So now I get a chance to introduce our speaker today. Our topic is using your expertise to give back with purpose and joy. Our speaker today is Lisa Gable. She is a former presidential advisor, U.S. ambassador, UN delegate, and advisor to Fortune 500 companies. In January, Lisa retired as CEO of FAIR, the world's premier organization fighting food allergies. This is one that I have personal support for as a parent of kids with allergies. Name one of the 10 most innovative business women by the Business Burg. Lisa also is the author of Turnaround, a book offering guidance on changing the course when things are going south. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to you, Lisa, and I'm looking forward to today's talk.
Well, great. Thanks so much for the kind introduction. And it's such a pleasure to be with you all today. We actually have two more poll questions just so I can get a feel as to who's in the audience. So, should we go ahead and do those?
Yes. First one is on the screen. Okay. Looks like everybody's responded. We have 78% in a job as an entrepreneur, 11% preparing for retirement, and 11% in some phase of retirement.
Okay,
Ready for the second question?
I am.
Second question is on the screen. Okay. Looks like everyone has responded. 22% are between the ages of 30 and 45, 56% between the ages of 45 and 60, and 22% is over 60.
Well, great. That is very helpful. Thanks so much to give me some clarity as I'll know what to focus on. Why don't we go to our next slide? Through the introduction, as you all may have gathered, I've had a number of careers. However, my husband was asking me why I keep calling this my third phase of life. So I thought I might explain a little bit because it sounds as if we have some folks that are in the process of still being in a job, thinking about the future, and others are in the process of retiring, and some folks have retired. For me, phase one was my credentialing phase, college, grad school, the first jobs at top tier institutions. Phase two was my impact phase. It was taking those credentials and skills I learned to help organizations move to the next level of performance. So today I'm in phase three, and that's determining how I can best deploy the plethora of experiences with which I've been blessed to enable and support the next generation of leaders and those who are investing in solutions to solve big problems. Impact investment, health equity, democracy, climate tech, health and wellness. The conversations I'm having today are around big, hairy, audacious goals with an eye towards implementation, sustainability, and measurement. Next slide. I call this the Think Big slide. A great thing about innovators is their immense creativity, their desire to create cool technologies that we see in science fiction and make them a reality. However, as I learned at Intel Corporation, you've got to be able to bring solutions to scale at a price point that is affordable in the current economic environment. And that's a tall order, which requires a multi-sectoral approach and tapping into nearly 40 years of my personal experience in nonprofits, government, and business. In my career, I've seen the big idea work many times, and I've been fortunate enough to see it transform organizations and improve people's lives. Today, the economics of the business are complex. The future is murky. And I'm excited to have an opportunity to work with smart people to affect positive change, which empowers individuals to make a big difference. I look forward to once again translating my big ideas into actionable steps. But this time, I'm not leading the charge, but I'm opening doors, coaching, and mentoring to ensure that the next generation of leaders have what they need to change the world. And you can too. Next slide. Making the most of introductions you've been given, reciprocating, making matches between people you think should know each other, even if there's no apparent benefit for your doing so, that's what makes this next phase of life so much fun. In my years of advising and working alongside Fortune 500 CEOs, presidential appointees, C-suite executives, I've seen many talented individuals fall into the trap of being defined solely by their position rather than their legacy of amazing outcomes. When they departed their jobs, they were surprised that their calls were not promptly returned and invitations they began to dwindle. And it's natural to experience that out of sight, out of mind feeling that with some strategic pre-planning could be avoided. Thoughtful analysis before an exit enables you to forge future legacies grounded in a life that breeds fulfillment and creates a sustainable future for the things that are important to you, your community, your field of study, and your areas of passion. The key and what we're going to talk about today is mapping a course to control where you want to go within the lifestyle and financial framework that fits the life you want to have. As you wind up for the next pitch, what you want to do is use your collective experience. You want to invest in building momentum. You're going to address pressing needs. You're going to amplify your message through multiple channels. And you're going to invest in professional services and resources that help you get to where you want to go. Most importantly, you have a big network. And so we're going to talk about how you leverage that for good. Next slide. As was stated earlier, in January, I made a planned transition from serving as a full-time CEO, a role that I've held on 3 occasions for 3 different organizations since 2004. As I accepted my last position, being CEO of FAIR in 2018, I knew that my goal was to build a portfolio of engagement that met both my desire for intellectual stimulation and my passion for giving back. Last fall, when I told people that I was going to retire after nearly 40 years of work, a friend who understands my insatiable need to build things suggested that I rename this next phase as my preferment stage. So I stole the idea. The focus is now on things that I prefer to do instead of things that I have to do, and I'm loving it. I'm not stepping back, but I'm stepping up in a way that empowers and satisfies me. Next slide. I think one important thing to remember as you're anticipating what you want to do in the future is the following. I know that I am not defined as what I was. I'm still defined as who I am and who I will be. The key, and I know that there are a number of you who haven't left your jobs yet, and one thing for you to think about is don't wait until you leave before you think about where you want to end up. Start thinking about it today, a few years before you make that big announcement. Describe your perfect world scenario, identify jobs 1, 2, and 3 that you want to accomplish, reframe success, and evangelize your vision that benefits other people. Next slide. You want to break down your past. You are doing a process, and the easiest thing for you to do is a process that you did in your own business work. You're going to audit your contacts and your finances. You're going to assess your asset's value. That asset is you. It's you, your network, your knowledge. And you're going to evaluate it against your future vision of where you want to be. You're going to decide what stays in your life and what you get rid of. You're going to define yourself around the positive change you're going to make in society and business. And most importantly, you're going to build something with compassion and humility. Next slide. As in business, you're going to define a path. You're going to have a path from your present, you're currently in a job, to your future, when maybe you're stepping away from a job. And so use the same process that you've probably used at work. Create a decision tree. That decision tree should be defined again by finances. No one can underestimate the importance of finances, how much you want to live on, and also how much you want to give away. But secondarily, that decision tree is going to be your decision tree. It's going to take you through a decision-making process around the interests that you've defined, jobs 1, 2, and 3, those things that you want to do at this phase in your life. And then you're going to build a personal team that focuses on the narrative that defines you at this stage. Those may be people that are currently in your life, Or you may start reaching out into other environments of areas that you want to go into and building a new team of people, both younger and older than you are or the same age, who can mentor you through this process. And most importantly, you're going to continuously refine your decision making based on what you learn. Next slide. But you're going to execute at the pace that you want with agility and heart. And one thing I want to stress, and I have to tell you, I'm the worst at following my own advice, is you don't have to be aggressive right now. I'm so used to being aggressive, a type A personality running down the road, but this is a different phase of life. You don't have to be aggressive. You can be thoughtful, and most importantly, you don't want to overcommit at the beginning. You want to give yourself the time to find the things that are going to define this stage and be exactly what you want. So you're going to set goals that fit your interest and the type of life you want to lead. You're going to look for opportunities to partner because the reality is none of us have the ability to do everything or be all things to all people. So no matter what you choose, again, academia, perhaps advisory boards, a career in nonprofit or a second career, third career in the government, you want to partner with other people. Those are the people that you just went and interviewed about the new areas that you want to move into. And you're going to lead with confidence and diplomacy. And I'm going to say something that I'm going to say throughout this presentation and that I've counseled so many people through the years. You have absolutely nothing left to prove. We go through stages 1 and 2 in our lives, always trying to prove something, right? We're headed up that ladder. Well, right now, you're not sliding down the ladder, but you're at the top. You're at the top of your career. And so you don't have to prove anything to anybody else. You can actually do what you want to do. Next slide. Now, one thing you may want to do is you want to depending on where you are, and I know again, we had a sort of a breakdown in ages, but we've got a lot of people sort of in that middle age frame, is you may want to leave the door open for reentry. And what I mean by that is you've had a very long career and a break is required, especially after the last 3 years. But you may be surprised as you move forward that the door opens up again for a political appointment, a role in academia, or even a corporate role in a company that you were an angel investor in. If a new opportunity arises that sounds energizing, you can craft your reentry, but you can do so in a manner that retains the lifestyle attributes that are important to you, but they also allow you to invest in yourself one more time. And as I said before, you've been successful. You have nothing left to prove. You've given back. You can let life happen and you can enjoy the life that you have. A phrase I will repeat often. Next slide. But your options are endless. One of the things we didn't talk about is someone may be going, how does she know so much? Because she just retired herself. And what I should tell you is I had the opportunity to serve in presidential personnel in the Reagan White House. I interviewed 1,000 people. And I have actually served in multiple administrations for 4 presidents, both Democrats and Republicans, and 2 governors, both Democrats and Republicans. I've served both in full-time positions and also what we call boards and commissions. And because I've had this interesting life experience, I've actually counseled people in how to become an ambassador. How do you get to be on a corporate board? How do you get to be in a not-for-profit board? I've been on the not-for-profit boards of Girl Scouts of the USA and Boys and Girls Clubs of America. So I've had a wide variety of experience and have always ended up having the chance to sort of walk people through this. And so if you look at all the different options that are shown on this slide, there's so many things that you can do. But the important thing is you're investing in your future now. So if you are thinking that you want to make a big splash, and it's not required, but perhaps you really do want to maintain a certain level of activity, be forward seen in the work that you do, I'm going to suggest that you hire your own PR team. I'm also going to suggest that you personally fund programs that support your future goals. What you want to do is you want to invest in projects that are important to you so that you become the donor now, not the company you represent. And I think that's a big transition for a lot of people that have been in large corporations, is that they've funded on behalf of an organization, or perhaps their political funding that they've done has been part of a PAC, has been part of the company or the organization in which they are involved. In this case, if you do want to be front and center, if you do want to have influence, you need to write the checks yourself. But you want to do so to help you move forward towards the life and the issues that are important to you. So you're going to define yourself through the positive changes that you've made in society, business, and the lives of others. You're creating a story not about you, but about the lives you've touched. You're going to be that person who helps young leaders move forward. Not only are you going to build a positive legacy, but you'll continue to foster the loyalty of those who want to be part of your ongoing journey. You're going to operate in a manner that leaves doors wide open. You're going to make thoughtful commitments to the needs of others, and you're going to keep your relationships meaningful. Again, you get to have a break, but be transparent about it and make sure that you return people's emails, especially if you do want to take a break, go on vacation, do some travel, but re-enter later on. You want to build a narrative that defines how you want to be known. So I suggest working now with a coach or a peer mentor to quantify the results that you've brought about through your incredibly illustrious careers and perhaps the volunteer work that you've done. You want to speak with facts, same thing that you would do in any resume, and you're going to be diligent in recording the successes that you've achieved in your career. You're going to do good work, and you're going to have a long history of positive impact, and you've already had a long history of positive impact, so show it. And as I said, this is a list of all the options that are available to you, and there are even more. Let's go to the next slide. If you read my writings, I publish in 4 different magazines, and I also have written my book. I talk a lot about mentoring, and I'm sure many of you have mentored. So if you want to go back to work, if you're leaving that door for reentry, or if you just want to dabble a little bit more, some tips for you to consider. Make the most of the introductions. Even if you don't see the reason for meeting someone, you could be surprised how that chance meeting, that chance coffee opens up a whole new opening of opportunity. You're going to reciprocate the kindness that people give to you through this process because you're asking people to help you figure out. You're actually getting mentored by other people. And you're going to matchmake. As you go along the path, you're going to think about somebody you just met who might be good for someone else to meet. And what you may want to do is combine credentialing yourself with coaching. Allow yourself to be reverse mentored and collaborate with someone else so that you can mentor them. It's an interesting stage that you're at right now, and I live in Washington, D.C., and I see it all the time, that people have gone up to such high levels that they no longer have a network of young people that they really know. So take the time to build a network if it's important to you, and take advantage of the younger people because they can reverse mentor for you. There's always the possibility that if you decide, or financially, if you need to go back to work, different things you could consider, again, to not completely change your lifestyle, or job sharing. You can actually job share with the best of class performer who's younger than you are. That's going to build a bridge between generations, and I actually think it's something that's going to be important for companies to utilize, not for profits, is that relationship between the older and the younger. But again, you're building a cadre of seasoned professionals always to surround yourself with, and I take that word professionals lightly. You may decide that you want to become very involved in your church or your child's school or in something else. It's that peer group that you're trying to find who think and work like you do. Next slide. So how do you build to this future you? First, you're going to start the process without assumptions. I will tell you that I began, currently I'm an entrepreneur in residence at SMU's Lyell School of Engineering, and I started that path in June of last year, calling friends of mine that had been adjunct professors or entrepreneurs in residence or distinguished fellows and heads of institutes. And I really called through a number of universities. I had so much fun finding out how you do that. And I had no assumptions. I really wanted to understand, well, how does it all work? And so I took the time to engage in thoughtful conversation. I also found like minded people as I began that conversation. I found other people who'd followed similar career paths, and it was really interesting to see how they defined phase three of their life and how they did it within an academic institution. Like I said before, slow down. Again, something I tell myself all the time. I don't have to treat every step like something that I have to do. It is by far the hardest Lisa Gable conversation that I have because I'm so used to being so diligent. But I'm also keeping my relationships warm because I also know that as I'm going down this process, the process I started last June, that I'm going to reach back out to people and go, hey, I ended up doing what you talked to me about. Here's what happened. Do you have a way that we can collaborate? So you're really starting to build this next phase, and I got to tell you, it's a lot of fun. Next slide. You're leaving your mark. The things you build speak to your impact on the world around you. I always think about my life as It's a Wonderful Life and Jimmy Stewart. And, I do think that with the careers we've had, we would be surprised all the little things that we've done that have had a huge impact on someone's life. And you're getting ready to head down a new adventure. I gave you a whole list of things that you can go and do. All of those will have an impact that build positively for your community and for your country and for you and your family. Next slide. No matter what you do, remembering that as you're leaving your current job, as you're stepping back, but you're not stepping away completely, that your goal at each of these stages is to end on a high note. Like I said, you've been successful. You have nothing left to prove. You've given back and you're letting life happen. And I sure as heck hope that you enjoy the life you deserve to live. So, what I'd love to do is take any questions that have been popping up and just see if there's a way that I can help you understand paths forward that you might be thinking about yourself.
Thank you, Lisa. This is a time where you can get your questions answered. So if you do have a question, please go ahead and put it into the chat function, and we'll get it answered right away. Okay, as people are putting their questions in the chat, let's go ahead. I have a question for you, Lisa. So many nuggets came out of your talk today, and I guess I should put myself on camera. How about that? And I love that you call stage three your preferment stage. I'm actually going to coin that for where I am in my career as well. But how do I credential myself if you're looking for a political appointment? There may be someone on here that's looking, but maybe not comfortable to ask, or even addressing a board or a commission or some kind of senior role. Can you talk a little bit about that, positioning
I
yourself?
I can. And full disclosure, I'm a Republican, but I've served in Democratic administrations and I've helped a lot of my friends. I'm a big believer that you help your friends up whatever ladder they want to go up because we're all helping each other through the process. And I'd rather have my friends get the wonderful and exciting jobs. So I've also counseled a lot of people on both sides of the aisle and libertarians, so covered all of the aisles. What you do is you start making donations yourself. I think that's the one thing that people do need to understand is that either you volunteer, you may want to get involved in a gubernatorial race or a Senate race, a congressional race, a race that has more extensive impact based on where it is, or a presidential race. We are getting ready. It's hard to believe, but in a year we'll be back in the presidential primary season again. So if you can make a decision to support somebody, get involved at the beginning of their race. You can serve as part of their cabinet. You can serve on their finance committee. You can either do volunteer work through your local party or through a C4 or an affiliated organization that may be aligned with one candidate or another. So you can both write checks, and again, have to be your own checks. But secondarily is you can get involved both in an issue area that's something that's of interest to you, or you can actually get involved within the committee of a large scale race. And there are lots of committees. There are the Latino coalitions, and there's the Asian coalitions, there's the entrepreneurial coalitions, there's any coalition you want to be part of, you can get involved with.
Yes. So basically, what you're saying, follow your passion, whatever path that kind of takes you on.
Right.
Great. So another question for you, and this one I can speak to as I transition from corporate to the nonprofit space. I found it challenging. Can you talk a little bit about a business person and how they fit into the nonprofit space? Because that
I
whole slow down that you said is absolutely true. Okay.
Hey,
Yeah.
I'm learning that in academia. I had so many people warn me. They're like, "You think nonprofits are slow? You just wait for the academic world." Um,
Yeah.
you know, with a nonprofit, one thing I do encourage people is we are in a uh, we're getting ready to announce. I think it was announced this morning that we have record high inflation and we're looking at a potential recession. It has never been more important for people to bring business expertise into the not-for-profit world. And I mean that in a few ways. One is not-for-profits need that process management that you have as a fundamental part of who you are and the way you manage jobs. And I have a chapter in my book and I talk about this that everything is revenue. Even though it's not for profit, it is still revenue. They don't think about it that way. But there are ways in the medical field that I've been involved in for the last 4 years where you can get companies to invest in pre competitive data within the context of medical research. That is a place where it really enables you to serve as that bridge to explain to the not for profit what they need to do, setting up the research institutions and mechanisms. I set up a clinical network at 50 major medical institutions around the United States. So you need to bring your business experience. Don't hold back from doing that. The other thing that I do believe will happen, having lived through the crash and having been chairman of the board of a not for profit in early 2000, is we are going to see mergers. And that is one thing that people in the not for profit space wait way too long. I've been getting notes from friends of mine in different organizations, and I've been strongly encouraging them to seek a merger, not necessarily with just one organization, but possibly two or three organizations. There will be a massive consolidation that will happen during the next year and a half. And so, if there's an issue that's really important to you, bring that experience. The other is I've been helping a lot with the Ukraine situation, both in country as well as relief for humanitarian needs for people who fled. And you'll see if anyone, I'm going to encourage everybody, please connect with me on LinkedIn because I do post a lot on these different topics. But I'll be posting, for example, what's going on with the women who fled. The majority of them come from high tech, CPG, law firms. They have professional experiences just like ours, and they need mentoring right now. So if that's your passion, go for it. Bringing your business expertise is going to be essential to ensuring that goods and services make it to those in underserved communities or humanitarian causes, because otherwise we are going to struggle. So you are entering this space at exactly the right time.
So good and so timely for your message. So while you're on this kind of thing about making the transition, can you also talk about making the transition into teaching, especially for someone who doesn't have a teaching background but maybe a passion for it?
It goes state by state, and whether or not you want to teach in elementary school, high school, college, university structure. And I think if you there's a credentialing process within the states. I know that private schools don't have the same credentials challenges. So if you want to move from being you've been an accountant or in finance within P&G, move into teaching math. But that's an opportunity. On the university side, there's what I discovered, and actually this is the area I started exploring back in June, is right now universities are building a lot of executive education programs as well as institutes. And so what the institutes, and I'm affiliated with an institute within the engineering school, what the institute does is it allows you, without having the PhD perhaps that's required for being a full professor, it gives you the opportunity to work with the students and craft projects that enable the students to get both the business experience as well as meet a need that has been identified, perhaps within, the area of humanities or a community or something else. So this is probably right now at every major institution, there are a number of these. There's one that's called Leadership and Character at Wake Forest. I love that. I
Mm,
just love it. Where you can bring business ethics. That's a topic that students want to understand. So you may not be able to, and if a friend of yours asks you to teach in a class that they have, and I do this for University of Southern California, I do it for SMU, where I'll go in and I'll just teach a class bringing forward my business experience. And it's so much fun. So
yes.
lots of different ways to move into that circle.
Yeah, I love the point you made about just being a guest lecturer. That's one that I have done too without having the hassle of kind of figuring it out. So another thing you talked about, another question we have is you talked about you coached a lot of people that were moving into different areas. Can you talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls that you've seen people as they transition to these new careers, whatever the path is, that maybe can help our audience to kind of think through those?
Yeah, humility is required. You're starting at the, as an outsider again, and so that does require a little bit of humility, and learning how to. One of the things I talk about even in business when I do turnarounds, and I think it's so important as you're transitioning, is you need to speak in the vernacular of the organization or entity in which you are entering, and so learn how they talk and learn what phrasing they use and then take your arguments or your points that you want to make and craft it within the way that they're used to hearing it because they're not going to be used to what you're saying. And they're not going to think about process management in the same way at a lot of these organizations, especially the government, academia, and not for profit. So
Hmm.
you do have to learn to talk the way that they talk. The other is reverse mentoring.
Mm,
I'd never written a book before, and I relied on a group of 26, 27, and 28-year-olds to help me learn how to write a book. And
mm.
again, there's a lot of, that you have to be humble because I didn't know. I'd never done my social media for the purposes of talking about things other than my family, my dog, and my, whatever, the flowers outside
Yes.
in the garden. And so I find myself surrounding myself with young people who teach me how to use YouTube and TikTok, and they teach me things like how to write a book, how to market a book. So I think reverse mentoring becomes one of the critical things. If you're going to go into an underserved community, or if you're going to go on a humanitarian mission, that's the other piece of the puzzle. And there are a lot of
Mm,
articles that have been written about this. You need to let that community mentor you
yes.
and not walk in there with a plan for them.
Awesome. And so we all heard it here. Lisa Gable is on TikTok. That's what you're saying. No, all great points. The humility one to me stands out because if you think about these very high leaders leaving and then going into a serving role, essentially becoming servants in these other organizations. So another question is you say I need to invest in professional help.
Yep.
So you talk about coaches and mentors. Can you go into a little more detail about what you mean by professional help and also how much money are you talking about when it comes to investing in ourselves?
It depends on what your pocketbook will bear, and it depends on what you want to do. I was launching a book, and so I hired, and I knew that public speaking was something that I really wanted to do and stay visible within once I left my job. So I actually hired my own PR agent, and I don't pay a lot. I'm not paying what you would pay as somebody within your company, but I did hire a personal PR agent that focuses on getting me things like podcasts and interviews about topics that are important to me, leadership and mentoring. I also hired a little digital team. I have a friend of my daughter's, he's 24 years old, is leading my entire digital platform right now. So you can find resources to fit your pocketbook. What you will also find is that there are people who just love to do this. And so in both cases, these individuals happen to have practices where they may charge a corporation that they're doing work with more, but they like having some people as part of their portfolio. And so they do charge me a little bit less. One thing I did, and it was really as I was learning to write to publish more, is that I hired an editor, and so if you think, well, I'd really like to publish some articles, then hire an editor. It's worth it. It's not a lot of money. I had somebody that I hired for about $1,000, and we just worked our way down, and it ended up being about $150 an article for her to go through and edit it and make it worthy of publication. Today, I now have relationships with multiple magazines where I have columns, but I didn't just get there overnight. I really did need to hire somebody to just, review and edit my work, and teach me how to write for the purpose of large scale publication. So coaches and mentors, again, prices can be varied, but you can find a price point. And the thing is, ask your friends. You're going to be surprised how many people you know that have actually done this. And once you open up a little bit and you tell people that you're willing to do it, you're actually going to be surprised how many of your friends go, I did that too, or I know somebody who did. So, in Washington, I know that there, and also in Silicon Valley, two places where I've spent most of my business career, there are people that you can hire to work with you.
Awesome. Let's see. I'm checking the chat. There are more questions in here. I'm so glad we have some more time. So if you do have other questions, please go ahead and plop them into the question box. Okay. This question is, can you talk about the ideal board size for small nonprofits I'm sorry, where working board members essentially take the place of staff? Thoughts
Yeah,
on increasing the size of the volunteer board from 15 to 25?
I am not big on large boards. And let me explain ways if you can do it. I have reorganized boards and rewritten people's bylaws more than you can possibly imagine in the last 40 years. What I have come up with that works the best is a very small board of 3 to 5 people, especially for a small nonprofit, which has fiduciary and governance responsibility. Those are those legal responsibilities that you have to oversee the efficacy and credibility of the organization, to ensure that the 990, that the audits are done correctly, and the money is being used in the way that donors want them used. What I have then done is build out larger advisory boards. Now, in order to make people feel invested, what I've done is that we have those, if they are donors, we have those advisory boards have input into the strategy of the organization and even into the budget. They don't approve the budget, but they, as board members, do have both strategic intent that they are brought into. Secondarily, is that if there's a merger acquisition, some states will require that your advisory board, depending on how you've structured this executive committee combined with your board of governors, you can do within that, move the governance and fiduciary responsibility to that small executive team, and then have that larger team vote on dissolution of the organization, merger, or strategic intent of the organization. But I find that to be much, much easier, especially during bad economic times, because you have to call more emergency board meetings, and it's a whole lot easier to do it with 3 to 5 people than it is to do it with 25 people. So boards can get unwieldy. It allows people to operate within the context that best fits their capabilities. But even when I took over FAIR, which was a restructure, I took it down from 19 board members to 9 board members. And when I had a board of 16 food and beverage CEOs who were all putting millions of dollars into this organization that I ran on their behalf, it was an independent regulatory effort. We couldn't get them all on the telephone. So what we did is that we had an executive committee with the legal responsibilities, and then we had the other, and that was 5 people, and then we had the other people who were part of the larger committee.
Yeah, great strategy to bring it down. So hopefully that addressed Deb's question. Next question, how do you overcome the barrier when nonprofits say you don't have relevant experience in the field despite 20 years corporate experience?
You make them read my book. And the reason why
I
is
love that.
because my book explains to nonprofit CEOs why they need your business experience. They're not right. They do need your business experience. Everybody operates on revenue. Everybody. You
Yes.
get money and you have customers. If you're the government, the taxpayer is your customer, right? If you are a not-for-profit, the community is your customer, the donors are your customers. You have two sets of customers and they have different wants, needs, and desires. And so all the amazing experience that you have is so critically important. And uh, and what I really encourage people to do, and I was on the board of a business school that for some odd reason did not operate this way. I tell people bring your business hat to the board meeting. What you don't want to see, and I've seen it happen so many times, is people are so reticent about pushing too much that they come into the board meeting. It's like they leave all their business experience, out the door, and then the organization gets into financial peril. You need your business experience, and
Mm-hmm.
so it may be mentoring and coaching, it may be easing your way into it, but the bottom line is everybody has revenue, everybody has customers. It doesn't matter where you work.
Yes, yes. And they get to get your book
Right? You
as
get my
well.
book.
Yes. Can you talk a little bit about mentoring? You mentioned that in your slide deck, and I've heard you uh, dabble here and there about mentoring and the power of mentoring, and maybe if someone wants to move into a broader mentoring role, how might they do that?
So I mentor a lot of people, and I always have. And I try to mentor people that have certain characteristics based on what's important to me. So I'm mentoring a group of young Black executives right now because that is very important to me to help them move up the career ladder and also the political ladder. But I also try to mentor people in different age brackets. A sweet spot for mentoring, tends to be people who are in their late 20s, early 30s, because they're going through life's transitions. And I think truly where people have the greatest challenge juggling everything is when they're, first getting married, they have kids, they're
Mhm.
dealing with all of that. And that's when we lose women out of the workforce. And so if you can help mentor them through that process, and some of that mentoring may be giving them the option of stepping back and credentialing them. What my mentors did for me is my husband was very, very ill when my daughter was first adopted. We adopted our daughter. And so I was working, and there was a point I had to step back. And so what my mentors did is he was having a number of operations. And so what my mentors did is they helped me get onto different boards and commissions and business boards so that I maintained my level of sort of where the world saw me, even though I didn't have to show up at a job every day. So I think what you
Mhm.
do is when you think about mentoring, it's not just mentoring somebody in the moment, it's mentoring them in their life. And
Yes.
and that's where people don't always ask, but it's where the greatest help is required.
Love that. Mentoring in the life. And when you do that, it builds such a relationship between you and the mentee when you're there for them. Yes. A couple of nuggets that I captured from our talk. As others, if you do have questions, we do have about 5 minutes left in our Q&A time. So please go ahead and plop them into the question box. But you talked about nuggets like nothing to prove and slowing down. And so I'm assuming that these are lessons that you have gotten throughout your career. So can you talk a little bit about that nothing to prove for, in particular, you mentioned type A personalities.
Yeah, you've done it. I think what's hard is that a lot of people, and I've seen a lot of my friends do it, and again, I'm guilty, that when they hit retirement, they're the people who completely check out. So there's that group of people. But
Yes.
then there are the people who keep running at the same pace, doing all their volunteer stuff at the same level of commitment that they were doing when they were working. And I personally find that dissatisfying after a while, which is
Hmm.
that you you don't have to prove anything. You've got a great resume. So nobody,
Hmm.
like we've spent so long building our resume that you got a good
Yes.
resume. You've seen on LinkedIn, there are lots of titles people use for themselves. Titles are important for credibility, but it's really taking the time to understand what you want out of this phase of your life. And it is financial. Look, it's financial, but it's also a time investment standpoint. One thing that I've made myself do is I am not tethered to Zoom except for 2 days a week now. So when
Hmm.
anybody asks to meet with me, I'm like, I can do Zoom with you on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. That's it. And
Hmm.
you want to talk to me, I'm running my errands on Friday because that's why I quit work. So I could do that on Thursday afternoon. But if you want
Hmm.
to call me on my cell phone, I can talk to you while I drive. But it is untethering yourself from the need to be
Mm,
on. And it's the hardest thing to do, but you're in charge. It's your life. And I think
yeah.
that is and I have to remind myself, my husband, if he was here, he'd go, she's not doing it.
He tell the truth.
Exactly.
It is a battle when you've operated for 20, 30 years a certain kind of way and it's time to shift gears. But I love the fact that you are intentionally telling people that give yourself permission to do that
Yeah,
as well.
you really have to.
So one last question as we get ready to close, and I could just talk to you all afternoon. That's just so many nuggets you're dropping today. Is COVID was huge for all of us, and we all were impacted some kind of way. So, can you talk a little bit about a person maybe in a position that they retired before COVID, and now they're getting antsy to do something? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, you know, I think there's a lot of reentry opportunity right now, and give and if you would like to do that, that's fine. I've helped a number of friends who also did the same thing, where they'd retired before COVID, and then COVID so shut everything down that they weren't
Hmm.
traveling, they weren't getting to do all those fun things that they'd wanted to do, and now they're antsy. So there is that reentry possibility. It's tough. I'm not going to say it's easy, but look at things like my sister taught me this. She's chief operating officer of a large not-for-profit, and she was a comptroller of a bank. She's crossed all the lines that I've crossed in business, government, and
Hmm.
philanthropy. But do a limited term employment operation, because that, if you go
Mm.
in as an LTE, and if you suggest that to someone, well, I'll come in as an LTE, and then that means that you stay for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, that you can have a lot of the benefits of being a full-time employee, but you don't have the obligations. And that's a way for you to sort of set the stage for giving yourself more options. They're contracting roles, but yeah, absolutely, if you want to go back in, now's the time to do it. I mean, we're watching a lot of young mothers who are stepping away right now.
Hmm.
And so there's, I think, more opportunity. We do face an issue with there is age discrimination. I'm not going to say that there's not, but that's where mentoring, that's where helping each other over that is going to be really important. And I do believe that that crunch of need, if you can position it to the employer that you're actually giving them flexibility, because you're not sure you want to stay there 5 years. So try the LTE, try the contract.
Awesome. Great advice. Great advice. So, any last remarks as before I go into kind of closing out our time together that you want to leave people with?
No, just, really, I think it's such a wonderful thing to do. I think that people underestimate the value of their business experience within all these other sectors. And I can't begin to tell you how important I believe that it is for people with strong business experience to come and bring that into all these other aspects of life, but also just enjoy yourself.
I love that. Just enjoy yourself. You've earned it. You've earned it. All right. So, as we get ready to close out another wonderful talk with another accomplished leader, I want to leave you with a few announcements. Okay. If this is your first time coming and you're not involved, I do encourage you to go to pgalums.com to sign up for the updates so you do not miss any of these wonderful webinars. I hope you've had a wonderful time today. I know I have. And then support the foundation. We do a lot of giving and impacting the entire globe. So alumnifoundation.org is where you can find out more information about the foundation. Also, look to partner with us through sponsor at pgalums.com is where you can get more information about sponsoring and volunteer, start, join a chapter, all those things. You can email hello at pgalums.com. And to access today's recordings, it will be up on the YouTube channel in a few weeks. So you can go back, re listen to it, share it in your networks because there were so many great nuggets that Lisa shared today. So please do go out and subscribe, like, and share our YouTube channel. And one last thing, remember this email, hello at pg.alums. You can get any of the information that I talked about today. And please do plan to join us next month for our next guest speaker, Guy Persuade. He's president of P&G New Business, and his topic that he'll be speaking on May 10th is how P&G is activating new business growth outside of its core categories. So it continues, and I'd like to thank you again, Lisa, for your engaging conversation today. And I look forward to receiving my copy of the book because I'm going on and ordering it now with it. And hopefully, if I'm ever in DC, I'm going to contact you on a Friday so you can sign my book.
Sounds good.
So, with that, I'd like to say thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye.